Hello, my name's Maggie Dent. I'm an author, a parenting and resilience educator. I'm a passionate advocate for play, and I'm also a huge advocate for the early years to be as wonderful and as enriching as possible. So, in my work, after many years of counselling as well as being a teacher, I started to notice that anxiety was increasing in our children. So, I really want to chat to you just for a few moments about what is anxiety, what's happening with our children when they're not long after they're born, and what can we do really quickly to help our little ones get braver and more comfortable and competent. The first thing I need you to know is that nobody is born incredibly brave, incredibly empathetic, and incredibly understanding, because the human is born without connectors between their brain. So just to get used to living outside the womb is quite challenging and stressful for many little babies, and lots can be very unsettled for a time after they're born. The stress regulating systems in young children, infants and little tots, right through to years 1 and 2 even in school, is being formed all the time by those connectors. And it's exactly the same as learning to walk, learning to talk. It only happens by experience, repeated experiences. So really what happens so often when a child gets frightened, maybe a loud noise, even could be mum's nose blowing too loudly, or if mummy disappears when they're feeling unsafe, the automatic, what we call flight, fight response kicks into the brain, which is, oh my God, I'm in threat. And it's really important to keep this in mind because this happens to children and it happens to adults. So the very first thing is happening is they cannot manage those big ugly feelings, which are actually triggered by cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and an overload of that will make them distressed, panic, run away, sob, throw a tantrum, all sorts of different responses. So please keep in mind that all the way through, our children are learning to be braver at all the sorts of things that scare them in their life. So our job as carers, educators, parents, family, are to keep our children in as safe and predictable environments as possible, and every now and then stretch them a little bit. So remember that the flight, fight centre in the brain is a trigger to make sure that we're safe. And without a prefrontal lobe, which is the last stage of the human brain to develop, quite often we get triggered by things that really aren't that scary, but they feel scary to our children. So remember, if you're working with children, always see the world through their eyes, not our eyes. And remember that little brain is frightened for survival, and there are certain things that make our children so much more anxious and frightened and worried than they might be. And that's when they have unmet needs. So keep thinking tired, hungry. If they're little, they've got a wet nappy. They might be not getting enough sleep at night. Their food might be not helping them stay stable. They might just be struggling with separation distress and missing the key grown-ups in their lives. They might be super sensitive to noise. They might be sensitive to overloads visually. And they may just be exhausted from living in our crazy, chaotic world. So I hope that gives you a really simplistic understanding of what anxiety is. It's a trigger of feeling unsafe, frightened, and uncertain and out of control. And it's a normal response. It's only when it gets to be too big and too scary that it becomes a problem. And we have to help our children learn to become braver, but soothing them, keeping them safe, and helping them understand our world is a really big part of that. I hope that's a bit of help. That's all for now.